He thought he was saving a tiny, helpless puppy from the roadside. Wrapped it in his jacket, fed it, named it. But the moment the vet saw it, he went pale and stepped back. "Where did you find this?" he asked. What the man had rescued wasn't a puppy at all. It was just after sunset when Daniel was driving home along a quiet country road. The rain had eased, but the pavement still glistened under his headlights. As he rounded a bend, something small darted across the shoulder, then froze. He slowed down, squinting through the misty glass. A tiny black figure huddled near the guardrail. Soaked and shivering. "A puppy," he murmured, heart lurching. He pulled over, grabbed a towel from the back seat, and approached slowly. The creature didn't run. It trembled but made no sound. Gently, Daniel scooped it up, wrapped it tight, and carried it to the sea. It was cold, barely moving, but alive. He didn't know it yet. But this was no ordinary roadside rescue. Back home, Daniel turned up the heat and found an old shoebox. Lined with a towel, he gently placed the tiny creature inside. It blinked slowly, those glassy eyes reflecting the soft lamplight. He warmed some milk, poured it into a shallow dish, and slid it closer. The animal sniffed cautiously, then began lapping, but not like a puppy. It didn't bark, didn't whine. It was strangely silent. Daniel sat nearby, watching closely. Its ears were unusually large, and its limbs, long, delicate, with tiny, curved claws. Still, he convinced himself it was just malnourished. Sick, maybe. Abandoned. He whispered, "Hang in there, little buddy." He didn't know what he had just invited into his home, but by morning, the truth would begin to surface. The next morning, Daniel carefully placed the shoebox in his car and headed straight to the local animal clinic. The creature was sleeping soundly, curled up like a ball of velvet. He still believed it was a puppy, just an unusual one. At the clinic, a friendly vet tech ushered him into a room. "Let's have a look at the little guy," she smiled. But when the veterinarian peeled back the blanket and caught sight of the animal, his smile vanished. He leaned in slowly, eyes narrowing. Then he took a single step back, closing the lid of the box halfway. "Where exactly did you find this?" he asked, voice low. Daniel blinked. "On the roadside." "Why? What's wrong?" The vet's face turned pale. "This isn't a dog." The vet took a deep breath, then gently lifted the small creature from the box. It blinked up at him, unfazed, its oversized ears twitching slightly. "This isn't a puppy," he said carefully. "It's a wild feline, likely an exotic hybrid. Maybe even a jungle cat or serval mix. But definitely not domestic." Daniel's jaw dropped. "But it's so small. And it trusted me." The vet nodded. "It may have imprinted on you, thinking you're its parent. But this isn't an animal you can raise in a house." He pointed to the animal's oversized claws, the unusual tail, the structure of its skull. "This species doesn't belong here." Daniel stared at the creature, stunned. What he'd rescued wasn't a pet. It was something far more dangerous and far more rare. Due to wildlife regulations, the vet had no choice. He picked up the phone and called animal control and the local wildlife agency. Daniel sat quietly, the weight of the situation sinking in. He hadn't done anything wrong, but what he'd found was far from ordinary. Within an hour, 2 officials arrived. They examined the animal carefully, speaking in hushed tones. "This is no stray," one of them said. "It's a protected species, likely smuggled or released illegally." Daniel explained everything, where he found it, how he cared for it. They believed him. "You did the right thing," one officer assured him. "You may have uncovered more than just a lost animal." The little creature wasn't just an accident. It was the first clue in something much bigger. As officials investigated further, pieces of a disturbing puzzle began to surface. A few weeks earlier, there had been reports of a suspected exotic pet trafficking ring operating just outside the city. Authorities hadn't found proof until now. Daniel's roadside discovery might have been the break they needed. Tracks led them to an abandoned barn nearby. Inside, evidence of cages, heat lamps, and torn shipping crates confirmed their suspicions. They likely discarded the cub when it got sick or became a liability, one agent said grimly. Daniel stood nearby, watching as the creature was gently carried into a secure wildlife transport crate. It had nearly been left to die, but fate, and a compassionate stranger, had stepped in at the right moment. Though now in the care of a wildlife sanctuary, the strange little creature, now officially Identified as a rare African jungle cat hybrid, showed signs of deep attachment. To everyone's surprise, it wouldn't eat unless Daniel was nearby. He visited the sanctuary often, standing outside the enclosure as the young feline perked up at his scent, pressing its head against the glass or softly chirping in recognition. Experts were baffled. Imprinting happens, but this level of trust with a human, especially in a wild hybrid? It's rare. Daniel named him Shadow, a nod to the animal's mysterious origins and silent presence. Though he couldn't legally keep him, Daniel had become something else, his anchor, and deep down, Shadow seemed to understand that he hadn't been abandoned, that he'd been found. It didn't take long for the story to reach the public. A local reporter picked up the tale. Man saves puppy. Turns out to be rare wild cat. Within hours, the story went viral. Social media exploded with photos of Shadow curled up in Daniel's jacket, his bright eyes watching the world. People from around the world were captivated. Some were amazed. Others were outraged about the exotic pet trade. But one thing united them all: admiration for Daniel's compassion. Donations began pouring in for the sanctuary caring for Shadow. Animal welfare groups thanked Daniel publicly. One magazine even called him the accidental hero. But Daniel didn't care for fame. He only cared that Shadow was safe and finally where he belonged. Weeks passed, and Shadow grew stronger, sleek, fast, curious. The sanctuary announced it was time to relocate him to a protected reserve, one where he could roam freely and safely with his own kind. Daniel was invited for one final visit. He knelt by the enclosure, his hand pressed against the glass. Shadow approached slowly, then rested his head right where Daniel's palm met the wall, silent, still. "You saved me too," Daniel whispered, his voice tight. A few minutes later, the gates opened. Shadow stepped into the transport crate willingly. Glancing back just once before disappearing from view, Daniel didn't say goodbye. Instead, he made a quiet promise to protect whatever needs saving, just like he did that rainy night.